Anybody in the hall coming in, come on in. All right, boy, it's quiet. I guess we'll go ahead and get started. People will start coming on here. That way you might not get as many questions, Commissioner. Come on up, Commissioner Raven. We're glad that y'all could come on early and help us move on a little quicker, and we look forward to hearing what the Department of Natural Resources needs. Floor is yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here today. Look forward to discussing our amended FY26 budget along with our FY27 budget for the Department of Natural Resources. Let me begin before I get into my talking points to say how thankful we are to Governor Kemp and Director Dunn for their continued support of the DNR mission and our employees. And I look forward to working with all of you in the General Assembly and hope you can also be supportive of these efforts. Before we get into the actual DNR budget, I did want to give you a brief update on several items that you funded last year in last year's budget. I hear from many of you throughout the year, and everyone knows that feral hogs continue to be a hot topic throughout the state. Thanks to this body and the governor, last year we created a new awards program that was funded and is being administered by our Wildlife Resources Division. The name of this new program is called the Hog Down Awards Program, and what we have done is incentivized the killing of feral hogs. We have a contest, and we award five traps, feral hog sounder traps, each quarter. So thus far, we have awarded 10 traps to date, and those applicants that have put in for those traps have killed more than 4,000 hogs across the landscape of Georgia, which is a very good thing. And then along with this incentivized program and the Feral Hog Task Force, we have removed over 12,000 hogs from Georgia's landscape, which I hope that many of you will hear positive comments from the ag community in your areas. Additionally, I wanted to thank you for your continued support for the Hunters for the Hungry program. We are greatly appreciative of that. This program has grown significantly with the funding that you have provided. We now have 56 processors across the state that are participating, which covers about 52 counties. 99 food banks across our state have received that donated venison that our hunters have harvested, which accounts for about 106,000 pounds of venison. We're working towards our goal for the year of 140,000 pounds of venison for these food banks. We hope to achieve that goal through the extended bow season that is still going on in our metro counties and down in southwest Georgia, but also through our crop depredation damage permits. And while I'm on crop damage permits, we continue to receive, and I want to make sure you hear me correctly, great feedback with our program and what we have done working with you, hearing your comments and implementing those into how we issue crop damage permits. Over the past year, we've issued over 900 crop damage permits where we have authorized the killing of up to 31,000 deer outside of our regulated deer season. So we hear you, we hear your constituents, and are committed to continue to work toward that problem while maintaining a healthy deer herd for our hunters. Now moving on to the budget, what we're here to hear about. DNR has several items in the governor's budget report for AFY 26, and that begins on page 259. We are very, very thankful for the $2,000 supplement in the amended budget, which recognizes the importance of recruitment and retention for the men and women of the Department of Natural Resources, and are very appreciative of those dollars that'll go toward that. And you'll see that supplement reflected in every one of our division's budgets. Under Coastal Resources, item 2 there is a $500,000 request to replace our Coastal Resources database, which is over 20 years old. This will help to streamline the permitting and application process all along the coast. If you'll look on page 260 under Parks, Recreation, and Historic Sites, item 2 is $1.25 million for erosion control at Crooked River State Park in Camden County. If you ever visit the park, you'll see the enormous amount of erosion that has taken place there since the 1960s. We've actually had to move our 11 cabins 3 different times because the erosion continues to encroach. So this request is to be used for the state match for a $5 million grant that we have applied for to address that erosion problem. Item 3 provides $500,000 in pass-through funding to the Stone Mountain Memorial Association for financial and operational review and planning. On that same page, under Wildlife Resources, item 2 provides $5 million for road paving project on Sapelo Island. Item 3 provides $2 million in funding for land acquisitions that would expand our wildlife management areas, provide outdoor recreational opportunities, and help to conserve our endangered and threatened species statewide. And then I'll end the amended budget with several capital projects that can be found on page 381. Item 35 provides $1.75 million for the North Georgia Mountains Authority for improvements and renovations at Unicoi State Park. Item 36 provides $10.4 million for a helicopter for our law enforcement division to support our search and rescue operations. We currently have a fleet of 3 rotor wings. We would sell one of those rotor wings to keep our fleet at 3. We want to replace one of our 407s with a 429, which is a twin-engine helicopter, and with the increase of rescue missions that we're flying in the gorge, I think if any of you were in that helicopter during one of those rescue missions, you would certainly want a backup engine should we have a skip or a fail. Item 37 provides $3 million in funds to support facility improvements and renovations at our fish hatcheries throughout the state. We currently have 10 fish hatcheries and produce about 11 million fish annually at those hatcheries. Item 38 provides $1.5 million to replace gangways at DNR operated properties throughout the state. That money will be used to replace 67 gangways statewide. Item 42 redirects $15 million out of our FY25 funds that was authorized for land acquisition at Paulding and Dawson Forest to be used for land acquisitions at Pine Log Mountain and Bartow County. Probably before it was left our inventory, it's one of our most popular WMAs, and with the proximity to Atlanta, it's a great investment for the state of Georgia to conserve those properties so close by. And then lastly, for the amended budget on page 384 under Go Bonds Issued, this allows us to utilize the remaining proceeds from a bond from fiscal year 23 that was used for Vogel State Park for dam repairs. This will allow those monies to be used at other DNR maintained dams. Any questions with the amended budget? If not, I'll move on to FY27.
We do have one question on the amended.
Okay.
Chairman Tarvin.
Of the other 2 helicopters, how many of those have 2 engines?
Neither. They're
This
both.
will be the only twin engine?
This will be the only twin engine. Yes, sir.
That's it.
Okay. Moving on to FY27, which would begin on page 261. Each of our divisions' budgets, you'll see, reflects the change in the adjustments to the agency premiums for the DOAS-administered insurance programs, as well as the GTA telecommunications and infrastructure rates, and the state health benefit plan. Going to coastal resources, item 4, page 261, eliminates the one-time funds that were used for beach restoration in the amount of $1 million. This was pass-through funding in our FY26 budget. Under item 5, also with our coastal resources, it removes $75,000 in one-time funds for equipment and vehicle costs, but we are retaining the personal services for those positions for the recreational fishing data collection. Along those lines, I've heard from many of you over the last couple of years about Georgia's red snapper fishery, and as you know, it's managed currently by the federal government. We have asked for a federal exempted fishing permit, which would allow the state to manage those fish off the Georgia coast. We're very hopeful that we will get that exemption, and these monies would be used to help us gather that data so that we can provide numbers and manage that fishery as it should be. If you'll look on page 262 under the Law Enforcement Division, item 2 provides funds to enhance the retirement benefits for select post-certified law enforcement officers. We're very appreciative of the governor adding that and realizing the challenges of recruitment and retention in law enforcement. On that same page, under the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Program, items 1 and 2 show an increase in funds to this program. Item 1 restores the 20% reduction that we saw in FY26 due to the revenues decreasing by 1, and then more than $5.7 million are restored to the trust fund in FY27. Additionally, in that program, if you'll look, item 2 shows a $4.9 million increase in funds to the program, which will reflect the increase from fiscal year 25 collections. And that's the collections of sporting goods from sporting goods stores and tax. Moving to the Parks, Recreation, and Historic Sites Division on page 262, item 3 eliminates $7 million that was one-time funding for outdoor recreation. Again, these were pass-through funds from the FY26 budget. Item 4 eliminates $300,000 in one-time funds that was dedicated to the Sam Shortline Railroad. If you'll look on page 263 under the Wildlife Resources Division, item 4 shows an increase in funds of over $1 million for the Wildlife Endowment Trust Fund. That makes that trust fund whole based off the number of lifetime license that was sold during this past year. And then lastly, item 5 provides an increase in funds to the amount of $200,000 for additional operational costs at fish hatcheries. You heard me say that we produce about 11 million fish annually that we stock in all of Georgia's waters, and with inflation, you know that the price of fish food has gone up tremendously. You'll see a couple of bond projects in FY27 if you'll look on page 390. Item 1 under the Department of Natural Resources provides $4.94 million to fund replacement vehicles and emergency equipment. Of these funds, $1.25 million will go to the gentleman that will speak after me, and $3.69 million will remain in DNR to assist us with new vehicles, as well as 7 aerial ignition drones that will support our fire efforts across the state. Item 2 provides $16.91 million to fund facility major improvements and renovations at DNR facilities statewide. And again, of that $16.91 million, $1.25 will go to the Environmental Protection Division, and we would retain $15.66 million in DNR. And with that, Mr. Chairman and members of this body, I want to thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Oh, there they go. Chair Lady Smith.
Right in front of you. Good afternoon.
Good
First of all, I
afternoon.
just want to do a shout out to what you and all the employees of DNR are able to accomplish with a very small team for the state of Georgia. And also to those who are listening, the DNR maintenance and care of our state makes us one of the most attractive tourist spots in the country. And another plug for Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Act. We've got it happening in Georgia, and I appreciate you and all the people who work for DNR and what you do.
Thank you so much. We're very, very proud of the system that we have provided. And when I say we, that includes everyone in this room. But the men and women of DNR work hard to make them look good every day with very streamlined budgets. I'm proud of the work they accomplish.
Senator Lucas. I think
I can hear you.
let's not try that. Let's try grabbing the person beside you, if you don't mind.
Do you by any chance, has the department by any chance looked at extending deer season?
We have. We routinely look at those numbers, and again, what is a healthy population, and then, we have a window that we can change the seasons in. One thing we did this year that was very, very popular, increased our deer harvest statewide, was to add 2 doe days prior to firearm season coming in. So yes, we do look at that almost on an annual basis. And we do have probably the most liberal deer season of anywhere in the nation.
Well, the reason I asked, it's been kind of warm, and going in the woods, and it's 75 degrees, doesn't do any good, but the deer still run all night long.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You're not suggesting we stretch that to the dark hours?
Representative Mathis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, I just wanted to say thank you. Had an incident on a big farmer down in my county where a bear had totally obliterated a cotton module or round bale that John Deere puts out. Tore them all to pieces. I want to know, within 2 hours, they had somebody over there trying to attack, catch the bear, trap it, and that sort of thing. And we were really impressed. The farmer was impressed. I was impressed. I had the privilege of going over there. It wasn't far from where I live. And they were real appreciative. So I want to say thank you to your folks in the field, to y'all, to getting the message out and come over, because we've had several instances where the bear do tear up cotton modules. And as we were talking earlier, we're trying to figure out why they're getting into them. We got several theories, but I just want to say thank you.
Thank you,
for
sir.
what y'all do, and that's simply it. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Chair Lady James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have 3, lakes or waterways that you regulate.
Yes, ma'am.
The one for the Chattahoochee is right in South Folsom, right at the Douglas County line. And we have to do a cleanup so many times. Does your department have somebody that comes to clean up? Because we have a riding down the hooch, but it's just our keep South Fulton beautiful.
We do partner with many volunteer organizations. I know Director Count and the Environmental Protection Division also sponsor a number of days throughout the year where we do help with cleanup efforts.
We have so much trash. When we finish, we have at least 10 people who have their own boats. Somebody, I don't know whether they're getting approved or what, but we have everybody that show up, and we have vendors that give us the orange jackets and the
Yes.
little grabber thing. So they want to know if if they can get something from the natural resources. I told them I would call or write you.
We are happy to partner and organize an event. Yes,
And
ma'am.
the other one is Sweetwater Creek. All of that is in my district in Douglas County. And Roger Bruce just retired, and he was in the House. He was the House member for that. And he had Let's Go Fishing once a year, and everybody wants to know what's going to happen with it this year. But he told me that I needed to talk to you or somebody in your department to see about putting fish in and how I could get fishing rods for the little kids.
We can certainly do that. Of course, he could come out of retirement for a day to help us.
Wouldn't that be
with
great?
That
That would be
project.
great.
Yes.
Okay,
I hope he's
and-
listening.
And the last thing is a horror thing that I was part of. I went to Sapelo Island for the annual Family
Cultural Day.
Cultural Day. And I am glad that I had already gone over to the other side, because I could see from where I was that people, about 30 people, some people drowned, but they fell off right after I had gone up that route.
Yes, ma'am.
With my family too. So I wanted to know, because they called me the other day and wanted to know if they were going to get the insurance didn't come through for some of those people who died. And there are people from Sapelo Island, and some of their heirs, they own little tiny houses.
Well,
They want to know what natural resources are going to do about pushing the insurance company who is supposed to take care of those individual people. And I told them to give me the names, and I would send it to the department.
that
And
is still probably the most tragic day in DNR history and one of the most tragic days for the state of Georgia. The investigation, believe this or not, is still ongoing. We're crossing every T and dotting every I to make sure that we get it right. So we're probably still a few months away from the release of the final investigation, but we will certainly keep this body updated as that develops.
They did replace the ramp that
Yes,
fell,
ma'am.
but the thing is still wobbly, so I don't know who. I tell people don't get on it.
Well, it
Unless they have another
has
one.
been replaced. It's being replaced again, and
Okay.
we're
It
way
needs-
over engineering this. Not that it wasn't engineered properly the first time, but it's going to be very substantial.
Thank you. So I can say you told me that. Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm going to do that too. Thank
Yes,
you so
ma'am.
much.
Yes, ma'am.
Chairman Yurda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you, Commissioner, being here with us today, and appreciate the job your agency does for the citizens of Georgia. The General Assembly has supported recent efforts to improve game warden, post-certified employee compensation. Has this had a result in improving folks interested in becoming game wardens and enrolling in the training?
Anything that we can do for any of our employees is of a great service, but yes, it has been a challenge, not just for DNR law enforcement. I think Colonel Hitchens would say the same thing. Director Hosey would say the same thing. It's been very difficult to recruit people to law enforcement in general, and we are part of that. We have seen a slight uptick in the number of applicants we've had the last couple of years. Our turnover rate has improved with what you have done and the governor has done over the last several years. But it continues to be a challenge to recruit those people that'll stick with us for a career.
Thank you, sir.
Chairman Anderson.
Oh, boy.
Commissioner, just thank you for you and your staff. It's a pleasure to work with y'all. I would like for you to give us all a little update on how we help our disabled people be able to get in the woods and go hunting.
Well, you have done that already, y'all. I hope that everyone in here would say that you've heard of our Outdoors Beyond Barriers initiative, an initiative that we took on 2 years ago. Chip Madron was the brainchild behind that. who is a cancer survivor that's in a wheelchair. With his idea, his vision, we've built upon that. We've got a statewide program now where we're offering opportunities, those with any mobility impairments, to get out in the woods and do what we do day in and day out and enjoy that. We've expanded that from from deer hunting, we've had dove hunting, we've had some turkey hunting, a number of fishing events across the state, and that program's just going to continue to build. I'm super proud of the small staff that has put that together, but again, all of you have supported those efforts in your local communities, and if you have a contact in your communities and would like to see one of those events come to your area, please reach out, because we've gotten the tools. Now we're just trying to get our message out to the people that can capitalize on this great initiative.
Chairman Saines.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to preface this in thanking your department for working with our office with this local input, but I know as the revenue has increased in recent years, there's also been some local concerns in terms of the department's larger land acquisitions and the changes that does to local revenue. Has there been any changes in terms of the local input process when we're making large acquisitions and determining the appropriateness?
We do hear that. You know, if you look at the DNR inventory across the state, I don't think that it's big enough to greatly adversely affect, tax incomes. What I would say to that is the economic impact that comes from hunters and anglers coming in and staying in your hotels and motels and camping in our state parks should offset any of the tax concerns with that. But yes, that is something that we do follow closely. We're not out there haphazardly buying every piece of dirt that's for sale. Again, those that have the greatest conservation value, those that we're able to manage efficiently because they already join some of our properties, are what really gets our attention.
Thank you, Commissioner Raven. That's all your questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Director Johnny Sabo with the Forestry Commission. Oh, are you gonna go? I didn't have you down. Sorry. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
It's not the first time I've been forgotten, Mr. Chairman.
How could we forget you?
Good afternoon, Chairman Hatchett, Chairman Tillery. My name is Jeff Cowan. I'm the Director of the Environmental Protection Division of the Department of Natural Resources. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you all today, and I will be quick. But first off, I wanted to say that I began work in the environment of Georgia in 1990, and I want to let everybody know today that our air, our land, and our water are cleaner, and they continue to be clean. I attribute that to the EPD team and the partners, this body here for giving us the appropriate laws and tools to do our job, and our DNR board to set the policies for us. And I'm really proud to be working on this this is my 36th year in that. Now on to the budget. I want to thank Governor Kemp and Director Dunn from OPB that have continued hard work on our budget. This recommendation gives us the resources and funding to succeed through the end of the fiscal year 26 and into fiscal year 27. Looking forward to working with you and the chairman and the General Assembly as a whole as we go through this process. As far as the amended FY26 is pretty short for us. We have a little over $1.5 million for a one-time pay supplement of $2,000 to our full-time state employees, and we really appreciate that being fully funded. That helps us a lot because we have a lot of fee-funded and federal-funded positions. Then on our solid waste and trust and our hazardous waste trust fund, there's no changes in the amended 26. Now I'll go on to the full fiscal year 27 budget, which will start within the DNR budget on page 261. We have the normal statewide adjustments, $76,000 for DOAS insurance programs, reduction of $8,600 to reflect adjustments for our telecommunications and infrastructure for Georgia Technology Authority, and also a reduction of over $1.1 million to reflect a reduction in the employer contribution rate of state health benefit plan. Next, on page 262, we have a true-up to the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund to align the budget with fiscal year 25 collections, which resulted in an increase of $3.1 million. This is attributed to when the collections of these funds come in. Sometimes they come in a little before July 1, sometimes a little after, so we have to true it up at each session to keep it straight. And then on page 266, we also have a true up of the Solid Waste Trust Fund, the new replacement tire fund. It's true up with the 25 collections, an increase of $270,000. Then on page 390, the commissioner sort of talked about this. The first is a capital expenditure for $1.25 million to do some improvements to our Brunswick office. We do a lot of work there at our Brunswick office. The project will be in 2 phases. The first phase will replace the metal panel roof, and we'll add more offices to accommodate our water quality team. We're doing a lot of ambient water quality monitoring on the coast. And then in phase 2, which will be requested in the future, we'll focus on a sheltered boat storage as well as parking lot grading and pavement improvements. Then next, far as replacement of our vehicles, we got about $1.2 million. $80,000 will be to replace the aging air monitoring shelter at United Avenue monitoring site in Atlanta. This is where we do our ambient air quality monitoring. We have $25,000 for a backup air monitoring equipment at our South DeKalb monitoring site. We have $510,000 to replace 4 pieces of laboratory equipment. This equipment will support our drinking water analysis for water systems across the state as well as our water quality work. And finally, we got $565,000 to purchase and replace 12 vehicles that are eligible for DOS's replacement through their methodology. Chairman, thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Right now, you have one. Representative Butner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here I am. With the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund, is there a list somewhere of the projects that are funded with those funds that are brought into the fund?
Yes, ma'am. It's all the hazardous site inventory facilities. It's all our old leaking landfills and all, but yes, ma'am, we can get you a list.
Okay, thank you.
I'll get you information on that.
That'd be great. And then for the Solid Waste Trust Fund, we use that to try to promote recycling, and that was the idea behind that was to try not to fill up our landfills so we don't have to cite anymore. You don't have to do this now, but the capacity of our landfills compared to what we're doing with recycling, I'd be interested in knowing if we are with that.
So mainly our 2 things there is to clean up tires and promote making sure that the enforcement and permitting of tire carriers and tire processors, tire disposal operations are done in accordance with our rules and regs. Also, we have a lot of recycling grants that we're moving forward, trying to help create a circular economy in the state, which will keep waste out of our landfills, and will also help businesses start up in Georgia to recycle a lot of these materials. So yes, ma'am.
Chairman Lynn Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm right here in front of you. So I want to back you up on what you said about improving our environment, land, air, and water. When I was first elected, the greater part of the Atlanta area was in a non-attainment zone. That meant no business, no industry. All of these things were on hold, and it's taken years, but y'all have done a great job with that, with not that many people to help. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. It's our team that does all that great work with y'all's help. Thank you.
Representative Glaze.
Thank you. I wanted to ask if you guys have a list of municipalities who are no longer involved in recycling. And the reason I ask that is I know that we have the grant money to help support and encourage that, but there are some cities in my district who have moved away from recycling, and for me, that's a great concern. As much work as we've done to get a better quality of water, air, and soil, we need to make sure that our cities are continuing to join this state effort.
Yes, ma'am. Our program that is headed by Leah Sassoni works to do that, but we'll also work with the Georgia Municipal Authority and the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia, try to get the message out on this grant opportunities and work with these local governments to help them set up things that hopefully will help it continue on into the future. Yes, ma'am.
Would you be able to provide that to us so that we can get that to those municipalities that we know have moved away from recycling?
Yes, ma'am. We'll work on that.
Thank you so kindly.
That's all the questions. Director, thank you for being here this afternoon.
Thank you.
And we'll move to our next item. Mr. Sabo from the Forestry Commission. Director?
I've got a PDF version, but did you want to plug in your PowerPoint version?
Yeah, because I got a video, if that's okay.
Sure, sure.
I'm going to have to point it out. It's, yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay. I would copy it, though, because this USB port, I've noticed sometimes.
Oh, is it not?
Yes, sir, it is.
Good deal.
Oh, thank you.
We're glad you flew in to talk to us.
I didn't quite fly in, but yes, sir.
But you
We'll
have the
talk about
ability.
that too. So, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, committee. Thank you all for this opportunity to present today. I'm going to run through a variety of things, but first thing that I want to do is recognize a few folks in the audience. One is my deputy director, Mr. Chris Butler. He's back there in the corner. Ms. CFO, Ms. Michelle Gray right here. And then two gentlemen, when I asked how do they want to be introduced, because they're pretty integral to something we're doing, they said just Bo and Andy, and I love that. So two of our fine members from Georgia Tech back here. So if we get into technical questions later on, I will absolutely defer to them. I always like to remind everybody of our mission, vision, core values, and really this comes into play more now than ever, especially using facts to drive our decisions and being responsible for our own success. And I'm going to play into that a little bit, but especially when we start talking about the forest industry and how does Georgia climb out of the hole that we are currently in. First, a little update from last year in recovery efforts. I appreciate the funding for tractors last year, so we've received 5 of the tractors so far, and 24 are expected within a month. So we are rapidly gaining that equipment in, and we will be ready to go this spring season. The fuel mitigation program, the $135 million, 132 of that was allocated for the cost share program with landowners. All of it is still allocated, so far $7.9 million paid. And one thing that we did, if y'all noticed, we had a second sign up. We called every single applicant, asked them where they are, do they plan on using the funds, do they need help, what constraints do they have, and how can we help them? And most of them said they plan on using the funds or they're waiting on cost share. We had roughly $16 million turned back in from landowners saying they were going to use EFRP, the federal program. So that's where we did the second sign up with the $16 million to account for that. And more than enough in reserve if we have to do anything further, as far as landowners wanting help. As far as one neat product we did with that program is landowners said they wanted help, but they couldn't find a contractor. We then worked through the Master Logger program with UGA to find loggers who were looking for work. And all the logging equipment's not the best equipment in the world for debris cleanup. You can do it. And so we have loggers getting involved and helping clean up Pauline. Just, looks a little bit different, but some of them are getting creative, putting rakes on the front of their skidders and different things like that. So happy we could help find work for some of the loggers. The fire breaks and forest road programs, we have finished with all the initial signups. We're still continuing to do that for free in the impact area. To date, over 3,700 miles of line put in. You see the hours, over 11,000 hours, and that is just in that immediate impact area, really in the worst of the worst. So that doesn't include all the other lines around the state and everything that we've been doing. All right, I want to jump right into the Governor's Forestry Task Force before I kind of come back to more traditional GFC ask. Want to start with the mass timber building, and I've heard a few questions about that and the what and the why, and I want to thank the governor. I think he teed it up nicely when we talk about building with mass timber in the state. So when we look at nationally, population densities are actually supposed to decrease and go down. Lumber, dimensional lumber, it is tied to new starts. When I say new starts, that's new construction. So if we think new construction is going to go down, which it has been, then how do we find other uses for this wood to increase construction? And mass timber is an outstanding answer for it. There are some discrepancies in what costs are for mass timber to build with mass timber. I'll just be honest, and it looks like some of the numbers are on average about 10% higher to build with mass timber. But you're getting a superior product, carbon sequestration, natural resources. We're the #1 forestry state in the nation, and there's no reason that we shouldn't be doing it. The other thing it will do is if we start building with mass timber from an agency perspective, GFC has 101 offices around the state. We have 37 that need serious repair or rebuilding. And I think about all of our other agency partners. We're in prime position to attract a mass timber facility into Northeast Georgia where they have market access to Atlanta, Chattanooga, Asheville, Greenville, all these cities that are utilizing mass timber. So then we start finding another market and an avenue for our wood, but we have to start somewhere. So that's my commitment here is we get this done, let GFC figure it out, where can we find efficiencies building with mass timber within the state, get the product we need, a product that's going to be around for 100 years, and then go forward. The Georgia grown wood product, phase 2, we're asking for a one-time $660 in the amended budget, and sorry, I should say all these asking are in our AFY 26. Phase 1 at its heart was content development. There's some meat on the bone and push out with it, but phase 2 really starts working with economic development and others to how do we put ourselves #1 in the line for trying to attract industry. And if you think about it, South Carolina lost markets a couple of years ago, Alabama's lost markets before that, Mississippi before them, and Arkansas. So if you're industry and you're looking to come in, your cost of wood is a major factor into when you're building industry, right? And if your input costs are significantly cheaper somewhere else, then why should they go where their input costs are a little bit higher? Well, number one state to do business. You know, we just need to show it off and show off our infrastructure, our ports, and everything else that we have. And this Georgia Grown Wood project would allow us to do that. The last one, the one I'm really most excited about, and I'm going to apologize because I'm actually just going to read something straight, which I hate to do, but it is the Georgia Forestry Innovation Initiative in partnership with Georgia Tech. And I'll set this up to say there's a lot of stuff that flies around, and the Forestry Task Force took a deep dive into. And one big one, sustainable aviation fuel and all these other markets. Well, what's not widely known is that's pretty much hamstrung by the renewable fuel standards at a federal level. I don't know if you've tried to change anything at a federal level lately, but it's pretty tough. And so we're looking for something, what can we do with our small diameter wood, because that's what we lost with the paper mills. How do we use that product and we make it sustainable, and not just sustainable, but profitable, where it doesn't have to be subsidized. We're not looking for rules or regulation. It's just good, sound business. And so the folks at Georgia Tech have been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to get to where we are now, and could not thank them enough. But if you'll bear with me, I'm going to read this real quick. The Georgia Forestry Innovation Initiative will enable forest industry expansion into manufacture of high-value carbon charcoal-related products, solvents for automotive coatings, and pharmaceuticals. Be established by the Georgia Forestry Commission and Georgia Tech, and will engineer, design, test, and transfer these technologies into concrete business activities. The two-year economic impact could add up to $2 billion to Georgia's GDP, and at full maturity could grow up to $80 billion, supporting thousands of rural Georgia jobs and utilizing roughly 12 million metric tons of wood. Now I want to stop right there, because what we lost when those mills closed was about 8.2 million tons of wood and 4 million tons in Georgia. So if we get a third of this right, we've replaced a market that we've lost in the state. These projections are dependent on healthy investment in piloting the technology to business transfer and to help incentivize investment. So they've done the research, they've done the studies, they've done the lab work. This is going from that tabletop to scale up and moving forward beyond that. There's multiple forest industries that's interested in this project. There's a lot of visionaries out there, but there's still some risk. So that's what this is helping the state take a little bit of that risk away. And to me, 10.9 is not a huge ask when we think about a $2 billion GDP return in a couple of years. And if we want to go more in depth on that one, on the what and the how, that's where I will absolutely get my friends from Georgia Tech up here. Keeping on AFY 26, let's see, Walter left the room. Talking about helicopters, this is the helicopter that you appropriated last year. I want to thank you for that. It is in Virginia. We should take ownership of it next week. We were planning on it this week, but the the weather and ice storm, we're like, why don't you leave it up there under shelter before we even bring it down here? It's going to be a little bit different than anything we've ever had. If you see the snorkel dangling down below, it will actually fly over, suck up water, has greater carrying capacity, and we're very excited about what this will bring and what this will mean to our fleet. Just in case anybody has the questions, no, it's not there all the time. It kind of tucks up in and out the way. Just really want to thank the governor for the employee supplement fund. That is massive when we talk about turnover and employee morale and what that means for our agency. $107,000 operational funds for the new helicopter. You'll see the full amount in FY27, but that's essentially the last quarter to cover the full amount when we think about fuel, maintenance, and everything else when we have an addition to fleet. 10.9 for the Georgia Forestry Innovation Initiative. That's what we just talked about with Georgia Tech, and $148,000 in pass-through funding to Talbot County. As far as capital outlay, 2.6 for mass timber that we just went over, and then $12 million for tractor replacement. And I want to touch on that one a little bit, and I'm going to show the importance of why here later. But last year we were asking for 10.9 in the amended, and we had 1.1 in our actual operating budget. This year that 1.1 is going to be shifted, and we'll show that. And so we won't have the full 12 million, if you will, going forward. So the 12 million is actually going to be in an amended budget as we move. But that 1.1 we really need for operational funds. So when we get into the FY27 budget, when you see that 1.01 in operating funds, that's what we had for equipment replacement. Now it's being taken out of that and moved to operational funds. On average, our average fire response now is costing us $480 more per fire. So when we talk about 4,000 wildfires in a year, it's just taking more to attack the fire. Fuel goes up. I don't have to tell you all inflation's gone up, but honestly, it's just more people and more manpower, especially in the impact area. $428,000 for the helicopter. That's what we just talked about, 107 in the amended for the last quarter, and that will help with operational funds in our aviation fleet as well. Full support for the 2.4 thousand and the post-certified law enforcement officers. Many folks aren't aware, but GFC actually has law enforcement officers, and we do arson investigation, timber theft, partner with the fire marshal's office, DNR, and we actually arrested one arsonist this past week, and we're on one in another one this week, and I won't get too much deeper than that. But they do a lot of good work, and a lot of times they go unnoticed, and to me that just means they're doing their job, and it's couldn't thank that group enough. Capital, 1.7 for light-duty vehicles, so that's everything from engines to transports to pull to tractors, Chief Ranger trucks, things like that. 1.6 for major maintenance and repair, and then a little over $1 million for new construction for a truck shed in Coffee County. And of course, this was all done before the kind of mass timber movement when we put this in there, but of course we're going to look to do that with mass timber as well. So that is the absolute goal. And I would like to pause for a second and point this picture out. If y'all look at that picture, it doesn't really look like Georgia, but it's a pretty neat moment. We had 12 boys and girls from this state fly up to Alaska, and they handed them the #1 priority fire in the nation, which means it could not be ripping anymore, could not be doing any more damage, and they turned it over to a bunch of people from Georgia up in Alaska. And could not be more proud of them for 2 weeks. Not going to say they stopped the fire, not when there are conditions like that, but no one was hurt and no homes lost, and protected everything critical to the state. So really proud of our team for what they did. Moving in, just kind of a wildfire outlook, and I know this feels a little weird seeing as we're bracing for an ice storm, but it's there and it's real. So the governor mentioned over 4,000 wildfires, 26,000 acres. We have seen an increase in wildfires, and it's cyclical, and now we have a lot of fuel loading from Helene, which we talked about last year. This fiscal year, when we looked at just this fiscal year instead of calendar year, so far we're halfway to that 4,000 again, so we're still tracking for a high year. And then one number I did want to throw out, and some of y'all in this room may not like that as I'm looking at Senator Goodman, as we talk about Okefenokee Swamp, and when we talk about using data and facts to drive our decisions, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I hope it doesn't happen. I really hope I'm wrong. But that 52 inches annual precipitation is pretty important down there. So when we go back to 2006, we only had 40 inches. 2007 was a terrible year. 2010, we had 36 inches. 2011 was a terrible year. 16, 47 inches. We know what 17 was. And so far in 25, we've had 41 inches. So that swamp is really dry. Everything surrounding the swamp is dry. Our whole southeast corner right now is just a tinderbox. So this rain we're getting is not going to mitigate that. It's going to give us about a week off at most to kind of rehab our equipment and get ready to go again. Kind of prove my point, when fire is burning like this at night, these are all within the last couple weeks, that is not a good time. Usually at night, humidity comes up, winds lay down, and we're able to catch it. When you see, pictures like on your, where is it? Your bottom left here, and it's spotting out in front of itself in the middle of the night, that's not fun. So those are the kind of conditions that we're facing right now. And quite honestly, the lines that we've pre-established have been a big help, roads, and we're just going to continue to be aggressive on putting in lines, pre-establishing lines, working with landowners, and be aggressive to the scene as soon as we get called. And wanted to play this for you too. We're leaning more and more into technology. So we had a big swamp fire in Atkinson County, could not access it, could not get into it, and so we utilize a drone to light it off in the middle and then light the edges to where it starts burning, coming together. And I thought y'all may appreciate this one. It's a quick 30-second clip. So it's hard to see, but the drone's dropping what we call dragon eggs, and those dragon eggs will eventually light on fire. And then when it starts burning and come together, the interesting part was the landowner told us his whole life he's never seen that swamp dry, and it's dry right now. So it's once again, using data and facts to drive our decisions, and then just a wildfire outlook. So we'll continue to be prepared for ice storms, wildfires, whatever it is. But I could not thank this committee, this body, enough for the support that you've given us, because without you and without your support, we would really be ineffective in doing our job. So it is critical, and thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Chairman Carpenter.
Thank you. And it's outside my pay grade, obviously, but I know that there's some folks that are taking wood pellets and shipping them over to Europe and making power with them. And my question is, how far off are we from an economic standpoint for being able to do that in a state that's clearly hungry for power? Has there been anybody talking about that, or is the environmental regulations too much for it to work?
No, sir, I wouldn't say the regulations are too much. There's a lot of conversation on that. Matter of fact, I was with the speaker before I came in here, and we were having that same conversation about moving forward. So there's a lot of conversation revolving around that, but at the end of the day, it's got to work in the right place, and the numbers have to work too. Sure. And so I want to say that's the driving factor. Some of that starts, I'll be honest with you, I went to school to grow trees and light things on fire, so it starts to get over me just a little bit. But it's really more about, is that the most efficient use as far as just the electricity and everything else? And in some cases, it probably is, and so we're diving deep into that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's a lot of people talking about coming in to backfill overflows and selling it at a premium, and if you could sell it at a premium, then the math might work. So,
yes, sir.
Anyway, appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Chairman Goodman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank you. How long had you been over the Forestry Commission when the hurricane hit?
10 days.
10 days. And I just want to tell y'all, I mean, the work that your agency did of getting out and chainsaw crews and clearing up roads and really the work that y'all do every day, but also the work that you've done with me and others in the legislature in helping craft legislation. I mean, your service on this task force, 2/3 of this state's covered in timberland. And so anybody that doesn't think that what happens in the forestry industry doesn't affect all of Georgia, I promise you that, that it does. And really, there's something that I've talked to you about it before. I'm going to bring it up, but y'all, down where I live at, it's 11 miles to the closest place to buy gas. And you all are really the last line of defense in us losing everything we've got. And y'all fought 4,000 and nearly 4,100 fires, right?
Yes, sir.
And we're talking about the swamp. I remember in 2007, I was on that fire, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning. And I wish everybody in this room could be there to experience what he's talking about, because the humidity gets real low, and the fire spotting 3 miles ahead of you, and it literally sounds like a freight train, and it's creating its own weather, and it's sucking so much oxygen, feeding the fire, that when you stand on a dirt road, it's like a sandblaster on your face because that fire is pulling oxygen so fast. And I remember Buck Klein, who's retired now, but he was over in Lowndes and Lanier, Chief Ranger. 2 o'clock in the morning, he strikes out. He puts this thing around his face where he can breathe because you can't breathe. And he and about 20 other tractors went off into the woods, and I just remember praying, God help them get back, And so one of the things that before I leave this building that I hope they get done, and I'm speaking for me now, not for you, but I'm speaking for me. 4,100 fires. Those guys that are fighting these fires, y'all are heroes, and they cannot participate in the state firefighters pension, and that is something that I hope that everybody in this room, before I go back to Cogdale and hang it up, or the folks in South Georgia send me home, that we can do that because those folks deserve it. And I just honestly thank you for being my friend, but you really, you've done a great job.
Thank you.
And you were thrown into the fire, and I'm proud of you and proud of your agency.
Thank you, Senator. Well, I could not thank you enough for your support and everybody's support. And it's a great team. It's not just me. Outstanding team. So, yes, sir.
Chairman Tarbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will echo what Senator Goodman said as he made those remarks. I had chill bumps on my arms from experiences I've had when I was a child. And Director, every year when the humidity drops and the wind picks up and you look out and you see all the places that are grown up, and I think of you and your predecessors.
Yes, sir.
The questions I've got is one for employee safety and the other is for logistics. Over the years, this is what I think of every fall when we get into this season. The cab tractor situation, as far as percentages, elaborate a little bit on if our percentages, of course, are picking up. I'm sure they are. And the logistics problem we had years ago with some of the heavy equipment, being able to get it moved around the state properly. Are we pretty much stocked up in regions at least where we can move the larger equipment? And again, thank you for what you guys do.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the comment. So I'll start with the logistics question and moving around the state. That is absolutely solved, and a lot of that sometimes depends on the personnel to move the equipment, right? And I could not be more proud to say that our turnover rate, if I take out retirements, because in my mind, you do 30 plus years, you deserve to retire, we're at 3.2%. So that really helped solve that logistics problem of moving equipment, getting it around the state pretty quick. Even with retirements, we're at 5%. So we're not talking about a huge jump. As far as open cab tractors, we've been working with OPB for several years to put a plan in place. There's $12 million that we're asked for and amended as part of that plan. We replaced roughly a third that we had left before last year. We had 100, right? So we've replaced roughly a third of those. 2 more shots of $12 million will take care of all of our open cab tractors, and then the goal is to bump it back down to like a $6 or $7 million a year, and that'll put us on a 20-year replacement cycle. So that's the vision. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Chairman Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director. You don't know how much I appreciate all y'all do. Those guys in Stapleton do a marvelous job. Brandon Davis and all those guys, y'all do great work. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned we can't do enough for you guys. First of all, in my opinion, 2/3 of this state's in standing timber, and a lot of people don't realize that, and y'all got a lot to do. But you mentioned the 8.2 million tons of wood we've lost in Georgia. That's huge loss of demand. To what degree, an issue we're working on, the transferability of tax credits, job tax credits, investment tax credits, in your opinion, to what degree would that be helpful for us to get? You mentioned mass timber, biofuel was mentioned by the chairman up on the podium there. So tell me what your thoughts are on transferability of tax credits.
Well, I go right back to we're in competition with other states, and there's a lot of fine people in some of those surrounding states. And so we're at the back of the line because we started last, and somehow we got to get to the front of the line. And so anything that we can utilize to attract industry to this state, to either attract industry, and if it uses a load of wood, it's good. That's kind of our motto. So, yes, sir.
All right, this fourth line over here, y'all need to get together. Chairman Smith, Chair Lady.
Thank you. Right in front of you. Look down the. So, first of all, to the people who are listening who do not live out in the rural areas where there's farming, Georgia, and with the help of Georgia Tech and some other groups, we were the first state in the nation to do carbon credits. And the innovation and willingness to stick your head up and look around to keep advancing this forward has been of great benefit to Georgians. I think city dwellers need to see what mass timber actually looks like. It's not something they readily identify with, but it's as safe as any other product used in construction. But overall, and to all of our presenters this afternoon, we ask these agencies to do a whole lot with little resources, and so I greatly appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Chairman Yurda.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director. Echo what everybody else said about the job y'all do for the state of Georgia. And I love the aspects of mass timber and what the possibilities are there. Do you have an idea, how many in the United States, how many manufacturers of mass timber are there?
I'll have to get that answer back to you for the United States, but I do know if we want to use southern yellow pine, there's one that we use in that Smart Lamb in Dothan. So.
Okay, very good.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Representative Mathis.
Director Sabo, appreciate you very much.
Yes,
I
sir.
want to throw out one little thing here about Arrowhead Seed Orchard. A lot of people don't know what that does in the state of Georgia. When they go up and they pollinate these trees, they graft trees, they've increased from 30 years down to about 12 years or 10 years on growth on pulpwood. It's amazing what they do and how they do it and how they catalog it. I know they work with DNR combined up there on the land that we have there. It's part in Pulaski, part in Bleckley. My Senator Walker here, he's part of that. And I also, just to listen to the North Carolina state people that are involved in that and how they graft these trees, it is unbelievable. And I would encourage anybody in the timber business, anything that grows timber, to come down and watch them when they bag the trees and they pollinate certain things to get a certain tree. I was amazed, and I've lived there my whole life, and I didn't know they did what they do up there until I got in the legislature and was invited to go up and see that. But I do thank you for some of the equipment improvements that you've given us over there, the tree shaker. They have to shake all those cones to get down, and I know it was wearing out a few of those.
Not a fun ride, is it?
Yeah, since from 1976, the same tree shaker, so that was a deal. But there are a few more needs down there, and I'll talk to you on the side about that, and I appreciate it. But I do encourage anybody that's in the forestry industry to take a look at that.
I'm very happy you brought that up. So I'm proud to say right here in front of everybody that my team was ahead of me, and there's 2 that will be there in March.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Representative Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. I was going to mention that you had come in, and just in a minute you were faced with a hurricane, and then you were faced with the mill closures, and you've been faced with the residual from the storm, which is a fire hazard or opportunity that we'll have to face in the next few weeks. And I guess this is going to feel like, well, what do you want from me now? But there's a lot of the state of Georgia that don't understand how important forestry is to the entire state. Several have said that. There used to be a line item in the budget for the commission for education, particularly in the schools. And I remember when it was cut drastically. Is there any money left in your budget anymore for education in our school systems to the youth about the importance of forest?
We do. I mean, to your point, there's not a line item. We have one designated person that is their full-time job, works with Project Learning Trees, schools, sits on multiple committees, and then develops materials and handouts that we then train our county units, our chief rangers, foresters, and gives them fresh new products year in and year out that we'll find federal grants for to then implement in classrooms. So, yes, ma'am.
I'm glad to hear that, because I think we do need to keep people informed.
And all we have to do is offer Smoky, and they take us in every time. So that's yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you for all you've done. This man's listen. I'm sorry. I know you're trying to rush, and I'll be quiet. But we've had so many people upset about the mill closures, and I've gotten so many calls, and I usually call him immediately after they call me so I can share the pain. And he's been very gracious.
Thank you.
There we go. Director, thank you a lot. Also, just a parting comment, want to remind you that Representative Jordan Ridley is certified in wildfire management and fighting fires. So if you need him, he said he'd volunteer back there.
That is good to know. We'll
If you
put him to work.
Take him on crossover day. That might
Absolutely.
help us with some votes. So.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Director. Next up is Commissioner Nunn, and then we're done. Just kidding. We're going to hear from Director Nunn. All right,
You get to use that twice.
Commissioner
right?
Nunn, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, and I know that I'm the 40th of your presenters over the last couple of days. I started to bring some milk and bread for y'all because I know you've been sequestered away, but I think there's still plenty there. Chairman, members of the Appropriations Committees, I'm Christopher Nunn, Commissioner of the Department of Community Affairs, and I'm delighted to be here with you today to give you a little bit of an update and share our budget. I will do my best to be brief and to the point. Quick reminder, DCA is the state's community development agency. We support community planning and economic development, infrastructure, financing, and housing. We focus on helping build strong, vibrant communities, which, as you know, includes access to affordable housing. As one of 53 state and territory housing finance agencies, DCA effectively delivers solutions for home ownership and safe, affordable housing. So I'm going to work off of your sheet. I don't have a presentation. In section 16 of your budget documents, you will find a handful of agency recommendations. And I want to first start by thanking Governor Kemp and the legislature for your support for our state employees. When I left the private sector, I didn't really have a clear idea of what to expect, but I have had the pleasure of working with some of the most talented and dedicated employees and individuals in state government. And of course, I'm biased to DCA, but I will tell you that extends beyond DCA to all of the agencies across the state. Director Sabo, I enjoy partnering with him. Rick Dunn, who will be up here after me. I really appreciate the talent that we get to work with, and I thank you for recognizing the hard work of these professionals. While important and impactful, our work can be thankless at times, and I appreciate your full consideration of the proposed one-time supplement that's reflected throughout the budget. At line 703, under housing initiatives, you will note a $50 million proposed one-time funds to the State Housing Trust Fund to address homelessness across the state. So it is our intent to roll out a flexible, competitive grant program with these funds. And I'll just break this down into three basic things. First, you've heard me share a 2020 GAO study that shows a strong link between rent and homelessness, specifically a resulting 9% increase in homelessness for every $100 increase in median rent. In fact, homelessness is a complex issue, and it affects urban and rural areas alike. With these funds, it is our intent to focus on the issues of unsheltered homelessness. So the unsheltered population is on our streets. Second, we recognize that while $50 million is a lot of money, at the same time, when you consider the housing needs statewide, it's not that much. And so in order to stretch these funds even further, we do expect for these competitive applications to include matching funds. I've already had conversations with a number of philanthropic providers and with communities. Solutions to homelessness are best defined at the local level. This initiative is aimed to support locally driven initiatives by providing flexible funds that are leveraged by local and philanthropic matching funds, thus stretching the $50 million even further. And finally, while solutions in Atlanta and Savannah may look different from those in Gainesville, Tifton, or Statesboro, we do plan to require all grant recipients to provide us with the data so that we'll have a better grasp of the scale of this important issue statewide. I'm sure there are questions, but I'm going to continue through, Chairman, with the budget. At line 717, I must say with the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority, I hated to see my friend and colleague Hunter Hill leave in November, but I'm excited to be working alongside Trey Bennett, who's the new executive director at GFA, and I expect that you will hear from him in the subcommittee hearings. At line 717, you will see the proposed addition of $35 million. Last session, Senate Bill 13 expanded GFA's responsibilities to include project financing for natural gas facilities. This amount simply provides startup capital for such projects. Moving to One Georgia. In its first 25 years, One Georgia has made significant impact all across the state, especially in our more rural communities. And that work continued in 2025 with $12.5 million awarded to 11 communities for industrial capacity and recruitment. The recruitment activities entailed 3,067 jobs in places like Cedartown, Metter, Midway, and Warrenton. In addition, workforce housing and site development initiatives continue to address important community needs. Last year, we extended 11 workforce housing infrastructure grants in Cairo, Carrollton, Douglas-Coffee County, Gilmer County, Greensboro, Hagan, Leesboro, Moultrie, Richmond County, Swainsboro, and Thomaston. And the pipeline in that program remains strong. At line 725, this relates to an FY26 legislative add for disaster recovery. You appropriated $25 million to assist communities affected by Hurricane Helene, and we stood up in One Georgia a new program and conducted 2 grant cycles providing assistance to 17 communities in Appling, Bullock, Glenn, Hancock, Irwin, Jeff Davis, Jefferson, Lawrence, Lincoln, Lowndes, McDuffie, Richmond, Screven, Tift, Toombs, and Wilkes counties. This proposed reduction in the budget reflects all of those remaining funds, which we recommend moving to ag and forestry budgets, as you just heard from Director Sabo, to address ongoing timber-related disaster needs. Also on line 726, the governor recommends an additional $15 million for a successful site development initiative that was launched 18 months ago. The impetus for this initiative is the demand after successful deployments of sites that have been developed in conjunction with One Georgia over its first 25 years. These small to mid-sized industrial tracts enable local leaders to grow their local economies. However, many have been deployed amid unprecedented statewide success over the last 5 years. So since 2024, One Georgia has awarded 11 site development infrastructure grants to grad sites, that's Georgia Ready for Accelerated Development, to grad sites in Baldwin, Bullock, Camden, Dodge, Glenn, Lawrence, Liberty, Houston Peach, Screven, Toombs, and Worth counties. There are an additional 11 scholarships or smaller planning grants that have been extended to other communities that are seeking the Department of Economic Development's grad certification. And we anticipate that many of those planning grants will lead to infrastructure funding requests, which is the objective behind this addition. Shifting to the FY27 budget document, there are a couple of items beyond the standard enterprise adjustments throughout. At line 802 under Departmental Administration is a $2.8 million increase to address partial funding for prior year cost of living adjustments. I've heard other agencies highlight the fact that reimbursement of federal funds might take years. Yeah, as the administrator of block grants, there are no additional federal funds to offset DCA's agency cost increases. We are not seeking full funding for the increased agency cost. However, we do ask your support for this increase to address the impact on our home ownership program. Many of you are familiar with the highly successful Georgia Dream program. This program, which is funded by mortgage revenue bonds, relies on proceeds to finance down payment assistance. Last year, Georgia Dream supported a record number of first-time home buyers, 3,035 to be precise, all across the state. And a significant portion of the agency's cost of living cost increases are borne by the Housing Finance Agency with funds that might otherwise be used for down payment assistance, which is needed to sustain the increased homeownership production. Under housing initiatives at line 820, this simply reflects the reduction of $2 million to the State Housing Trust Fund, which you included in last year's budget with the explicit note that those were one-time funds. And so we are making those one-time. And also at line 836 under GFA, similarly a $500,000 reduction, which I understand was included in the 26 budget for a specific project, but also was reflected by this body as one-time funds. With that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my quick presentation, and I'm happy to entertain questions.
Thank you, Commissioner. There's an individual that has their button pressed. She missed the DNR presentation, and I think they said they would take their building in Taylor County, but I'll let Representative ask a question, maybe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon, Commissioner. Thank you for your presentation. And he's right. I do have an empty building that's owned by the state in Taylor County that if Department of Corrections, Community Affairs, would love for you to take it on if you feel that you need some additional space. But also, just to let you know, I wrote a letter of support from Macon County for the CHIP grant. So if you see my name come across, I'm supporting Macon County for that endeavor. But you mentioned in your presentation that you're the administrator of the block grants. So as administrator for the block grants, is it required for local governments that are applying for block grants through Department of Community Affairs to have public hearings to notify the public of their intent to apply for a block grant? And if so, can you explain that process to me?
So absolutely, and I'll kind of tie your question together. So you mentioned a really important program, the CHIP program, Community Housing Initiatives. That's funded with federal block grants. So the state receives that block grant, and we subgrant that to communities who are, in fact, required to do public hearings as a part of the application process for those competitive funds. It's the state is the block grant recipient, and those funds are granted to communities. I hope you're successful in the application. I know that program is fantastic, and it contributes to the construction and rehabilitation of homes in communities across the state. So yes, the public hearing is a requirement for that process. Those are federal grants.
Okay, very good. But again, there's an available building in Taylor County.
Thank you very much.
Representative Carpenter.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here, sir. Quick question. First question is on the I didn't realize this, but under the building construction line item, you guys set building construction codes for the whole state. Is there a possibility that we get a group of people that do a lot of building in our communities that complain about certain codes that are excess, that are driving the cost of housing up, to sit on some sort of panel to discuss these things instead of just carte blanche accepting international codes, et cetera?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. And I honestly would appreciate any of you who have questions about this process to come and see me, because I think this is a very misunderstood process. So in fact, you created a process for creating state minimum codes. It's the minimum code. And that is done by a subcommittee of the DCA board that is made up of 21 defined professions in the law. So it is the HVAC industry, it is the electrical industry, it is the building officials, it is the fire marshals. So it is 21 qualified professionals, including home builders, who sit on that panel. And every 6 years, so the international codes come out every 3 years, but so that we are a predictable state in which to do business, we do every 6 years, we revisit the latest international code and adapt that to Georgia. And it is that group of professionals from the industries, from communities across the state. Local officials are represented by local building officials and by local fire marshals, each of the industries. It's a very thorough process. I don't know that I have ever seen the international codes adopted carte blanche.
Right. Sure.
We are always working, and cost is absolutely one of the criteria that they look at as they go through that debate. So I'd love to talk to you more and share with you more about how that process works. But to be clear, that's not a handful of agency people at DCA defining state minimum codes. That is a group of industry professionals that were defined by this body.
Sure, maybe even just like a friendly suggestion box or something. The other piece is, of course, on the homelessness piece. I heard what you said. I just hope that sometimes it can be a much more cost efficient to catch it before it happens from stretching those dollars. So hopefully as we move through this process, we can have that conversation.
Representative Glaze.
Thank you, Chairman. So Commissioner Nunn, I was wondering if the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing is going to play a part in helping with those homeless dollars and trying to get more inventory on the market. And the reason I ask that, there is a lot of municipal, what we call barriers to developers actually coming in and building out more of what we need. And so some of that is around just going through the process of platting and making sure that they're streamlining some of those local processes. Is there a way to put that into the GIC program or the homelessness program, that grant money, to make sure that developers are not being hamstrung in the municipal process for getting, from the dirt to a key to a door?
Right. So great question, and short answer is yes and no. But thank you for highlighting the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing, which I think is a fantastic long-term planning program. And the way that I think that the answer is yes is over the last 20 years, we've had nearly 100 communities across the state that have participated in the GIC program, worst acronym in state government, right? Remember, pay attention when you come up with an acronym in your law, because it's just going to get a so I think when you look at those communities, many of them for years going forward continue to maintain that team to address community housing issues. And I think in those communities, absolutely, they can play a big part in how do we address homeless needs in a particular community. I think because that program is a planning program, so the people who come into the program this year are participating in a 3-year process, and I don't expect that anyone in this room would consider appropriating funds to an agency that you want us to deploy 4 years from now. And so, I think that the way that the GIC participants will play a role in addressing these homeless issues is that alumni community that has participated in the program over the last 20 years, or maybe in the program today.
That's exactly the program. The alumni are the ones we need to be talking to make sure that they help us with these barriers. We get this every day. Our developers are telling us we cannot get houses on the market because local governments are literally causing us not to be able to get there in an efficient and financially sound manner. So we need help, and I think the state can give, you know, some kind of assurance that we're making sure that those who come through the GIG program have this information, and we give them some information to help them streamline the process. If they're going to get the grants, and we're going to get the housing on the market that we need so that we don't deal with homelessness at this rate, we've got to get everybody in the game, and they've got to participate.
Thank you so much.
Representative Lim. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, I always appreciate working with you. And I just to stay on homelessness for a second, I appreciate the focus on unsheltered homelessness. To bridge that with what Chairman Carpenter said, we also know that a lot of the issues with that is people who are sheltered, at least by the HUD definition, become unsheltered and are not accurately captured by the periodic point in time counts. And I'm wondering, and we know a lot of locals struggle with that, is there any guidance that will be given, even some funds directed to addressing that? Because I think that bridges the gap between unsheltered and sheltered.
So I will just highlight, to you policymakers, we laid out a rough idea of a plan that was included in the governor's budget. $50 million is not going to solve all housing issues in the state. And in conversations with some of the philanthropic partners that we have talked to, focus is important. I know, and you remember, we administered $1 billion in emergency rental assistance during COVID, which that's 20 times this 50 million. And so we are certainly open to that feedback and to tweaking this program, which is simply a concept at this stage to address the needs in our communities. I mean, that's really what I meant when I said the intent is a flexible program that meets local needs. We really do believe that the solutions in Rome are probably going to look different than they look in Toccoa or in Atlanta.
You don't have a question? Okay, sorry, your light was on, but maybe not. Maybe it was Senator Eccles? Oh, guys, you hit the one behind you. Never mind, it's perfectly fine. Commissioner, thank you a ton. And two things I want to bring up for just subcommittee purposes. One, we'd love to know the rules, what you're looking at for this housing program. We're obviously very leery of what we saw happen in Minnesota. Want to kind of have some ideas of what our guardrails will be. And then also, what is the total announced matching funds you think are coming from other agencies or other places that will be there? If you know that already, feel free to share. If you need to bring it later on, that's fine.
I don't. We would expect that as a part of the application process. Okay. And I think that probably looks different. I just say this because not everybody will be in subcommittee. I think that looks very different in a community like our capital city than it would in Tifton. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the variety of hats you wear. Our next and final presenter, we move from Nunn to Dunn. Director Dunn. Your mic's not coming on, Mr. Hatchett. There you go.
Shall we say the best for last?
Probably.
We do have the block grant hearings at 4, so just so y'all know that.
And even though we're finishing early, please know because of federal law, we will still have to wait until 4 o'clock to hold that hearing. So we will not be able to accelerate that one.
Director Dunn.
I've got
The
an
floor
hour,
is yours.
I've got an hour video that explains the budget process at OPB. If you don't mind me, no. Yeah. Chairman Tillery, Chairman Hatchett, members of the Appropriations Committees, I appreciate once again being able to join you this afternoon to wrap up your budget week. Last week, the governor released his budget recommendations for AFY 2026 and FY 27. This week, you were able to hear directly from the governor on his budgetary priorities. Our state economists on the revenue estimate and the state of the economy, and from our executive and judicial branch leaders on their agency needs and specific budgetary items contained in the governor's recommendation. My task here today is to attempt to summarize and wrap up this testimony before you head into your subcommittee work and putting the stamp of the General Assembly on the final budget. Let me start off with revenue performance. We ended last year, FY25, with general revenue up $1.48 billion, or 4% higher than the AFY25 budget revenue estimate. For the first 6 months of this fiscal year, general fund revenue is up 1.6% over the same period last year. This is not great, but these are decent results, especially if you keep in mind that the first 6 months of this year includes a 20 basis point lower tax rate than the same period last year. The current FY26 budget passed last year is built upon assumed general fund revenue of $35.9 billion, which is $1.3 billion, or 3.4% less than FY25 actuals. My point here is that revenue performance to date, as well as our previous cautious budgeting, will allow for additional tax reductions in 2026 and allow for expenditure growth in the FY26 and FY27 budgets over the current base. So for this year's budget revenue estimates, for AFY26, general fund revenue available for appropriation is set at 2.3% growth, or $822 million above the current FY26 base. This is 1.2% less than FY25 actuals. In addition, we are releasing $372 million from the RSR for K-12 adjustments and $3.3 billion from the undesignated surplus. That makes the total amount of general funds available for expenditure in AFY26 of $40.4 billion, or an increase of $4.5 billion, that's 12.5%, over the FY26 base. For FY27, general fund revenue forecasted to be up 1.8%, or $662 million over the FY26 base. This is 1.6% less than FY25 actuals. There's no release from the surplus in the base budget. That's a total of $36.8 billion of total state general funds. It's important to note that these projections incorporate the expected fiscal effects of the governor's proposed tax changes announced last week. Personal income tax and corporate income tax rates for FY26 are assumed to be 20 basis points lower, and for FY27 assumed to be 30 basis points lower than the FY25 baseline on a blended rate basis. You heard from the governor at Exit Issues, the State of the State, as well as his address before this joint committee about his priorities for the revenue growth being recognized in this budget. The governor's priorities in building this year's budget include, number one, returning revenue to taxpayers; number two, utilizing the midterm budget to make high-impact, one-time investments into infrastructure and economic development; number three, prioritize public safety, particularly in security improvements in our state prisons and support for state law enforcement officers; and finally, number four, fully fund formula and enrollment growth in existing programs, fund new legislation passed by this body and signed by the governor last session, and annualize items initially funded in the FY26 budget. This is generally what we usually call workload growth and ensures that our current program commitments are appropriately funded. You will find that the governor's budget recommendations closely align with these priorities. Just to briefly review some highlights from the proposed budget. First, for taxes. The revenue estimate has built in the return of about $750 million each year on an annualized basis back to taxpayers through lowering the personal and corporate income tax rate from 5.19% to 4.99% effective for tax year 2025. If the General Assembly supports this proposal, the state would have reduced its income tax rate by 76 bips, or 13.2% over the last 3 years. That's $4 billion in income tax savings. Not explicitly in the budget is another round of income tax rebates, which is returning surplus revenue to taxpayers. If approved, this would be the fourth such rebate following those approved in 2022, 2023, and 2025. The proposed 2026 rebate represents a one-time refund of over $1.17 billion and is equivalent to about 7.2% of personal income tax collected in 2025 being returned to taxpayers. 7.2% of personal income tax collected in 2025 being returned to taxpayers. I'll stop at 2. If approved, the checks will be mailed to eligible taxpayers directly from the state treasury and deducted from the surplus fund balance. In terms of infrastructure and economic development and the midterm budget priority, the governor's AFY 26 budget recommends over $2.3 billion in general funds to accelerate transportation projects, including the expansion of express lanes on I-75 south of Atlanta. These investments, I want to note, are above and beyond growth in the dedicated motor fuel funds that are included in the budget. So these state funds that the governor's putting in $2.3 billion, are above and beyond the motor fuel funds that are in the budget. The governor's budget also includes one-time investments in economic development programs in rural communities. As Commissioner Nunn just stated, these include $15 million to replenish the One Georgia Rural Site Development Program, which was established in 2024 to assist rural communities to prepare large development-ready sites. $35 million to GEFA, the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority, to seed a revolving loan program for local governments, development authorities, and public utilities to finance the development of natural gas infrastructure. When you passed Senate Bill 13 last year, you recognized that the availability of natural gas is often a key driver of industrial recruitment and business retention, and many communities lack the resources to provide upfront financing for these projects. This is an attempt to begin to fix that problem. Finally, in the rural economic development bucket, there's almost $14 million to implement recommendations of the governor's timber task force, including almost $10.9 million to support the adoption of technology developed at Georgia Tech that utilizes wood scraps for carbon solutions in the automotive parts and pharmaceutical industries. I also want to mention $33.2 million provided in the governor's capital budget to draw down federal funds for the drinking water and clean water state revolving funds. Both in last year's budget and this year's budget, we have included a larger than normal state funds infusion to draw down the increased federal funds made available as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. This $33.2 million is twice of what we generally put into the state revolving funds as matching funds. These funds are critical to local communities for replacing or expanding drinking water and wastewater systems, reducing lead in drinking water, and managing PFAS contamination. Public safety, you heard about this morning. The governor's budget includes large additions to the Georgia Department of Corrections, as well as improvement in the retirement benefits for state law enforcement officers. We worked closely together last year on the GDC budget, and we saw historic additions of over $650 million to improve staffing ratios, harden existing facilities, and expand bed space. This year's proposed budget for the Georgia Department of Corrections includes over $200 million for capital improvement at existing facilities, $55 million annualized for inmate physical health care, mental health services, and dental services, and $27 million for 335 new correctional officers to improve the staff-to-offender ratio. The governor announced at the State of the State a special law enforcement retirement plan for officers currently enrolled in the GSEPS tier. The new plan is an enhanced employer match to contributions to the 401k savings portion of the plan. You know, GSEPS is a hybrid plan. It has a pension component and a 401k component. This impacts the 401k or the savings portion of the plan. Under the proposed plan, employer match to the savings plan of state law enforcement officers would increase after 5 years of service by 2 percentage points each year, capping out at 15% of the salary at year 10. To be eligible for the full state match, employees must continue to contribute 5% of their salary to the savings plan. I will not go over the math, but the increased contribution plus compounding will result in a significantly enhanced benefit at retirement and result in a plan that is among the most generous among our surrounding states and local jurisdictions. The governor's budget reflects a $5.2 million increase spread across law enforcement agencies to help pay for the projected costs of the increased match. Last thing I want to talk about is workload. We have talked about significant tax relief and infrastructure and growth investments in the governor's budget proposal. It's important to emphasize that we are able to make those investments without cutting existing agency programs or budgets to pay for it. Addressing formula and workload growth in a state this large is a big lift. When people ask me, where is the budget growth going to? The answer is most of it goes to workload or just maintaining what we are already doing. The AFY 26 budget contains over $320 million for workload growth and $1.5 billion for workload growth in the big base budget. Let me repeat that. There's an additional $1.5 billion in the FY27 budget just to keep up with the growth in our existing programs and funding formulas mandated by law. That's 4% growth in our state general funds budget, and that is fairly typical. The largest workload increases, as usually is the case, are in education and health care. The governor's budget includes a $550 million increase in earnings for K-12 education, $27.6 million for dual enrollment growth, $33 million for TCSG credit hour growth, and $219 million for enrollment growth at USG, all in the FY27 budget. For health care and human services, this includes $237 million for Medicaid growth, $23 million in increases at DBHCD, and over $65 million in increases at DHS. I'll close by mentioning a few other significant proposals in the governor's budget. The governor's FY27 budget proposal recommends a debt package for capital projects. You heard from Diana this morning. We have not issued any debt for the past 2 years, instead paying for capital improvements with our balance sheet. You heard directly from the governor on the benefits of doing so. There's savings of $3.3 billion in interest payments over the next 20 years. We have reduced the state's outstanding debt by 20% and lowered our debt service to revenue ratio to 3%, which is significantly less than the constitutional cap of 10% and the lowest it's been since the state began issuing general obligation bonds. We are no longer in a position where we can fully use cash to fund our routine capital needs. However, we are returning to the debt market with substantially less debt burden and greater flexibility to meet future budget needs. About $600 million in capital spending is funded with cash in the AFY 26 budget. For FY 27, the governor's proposed debt package is just over $650 million in authorized principal. So bottom line is our debt package is roughly split 50-50 this year between debt and cash. Second thing I want to emphasize is the governor's AFY 20, just mentioned here a moment ago, the governor's AFY 26 budget proposes $50 million for a grant program to local governments and nonprofits to address street-level homelessness. Grant recipients will be expected to put up local or private funds in order to be eligible. And though grants may be used for emergency shelter, transitional housing, outreach engagement, and wraparound services, the funding is intended as one time with the goal of building community support and involvement around high-impact interventions to address the homelessness problem in this state. The AFY 26 budget includes a one-time salary supplement of $2,000 for state employees, Board of Regents employees, and teachers to keep our workforce and help them deal with higher inflation. The total cost here is $612 million. And finally, the AFY 26 budget provides $325 million to the University System of Georgia's Foundation DREAMS program to provide needs-based aid to students pursuing an associate degree, bachelor's degree, or technical degree. The Dream Scholarship Program is an endowment whose earnings provide annual needs-based scholarship funds. The purpose of this appropriation to the endowment is to incentivize philanthropic and private donors to contribute. A reasonable goal for the foundation is to have a total of $1.8 billion for the endowment. Assuming reasonable returns, that should generate about $80 million on average in current dollars each year for needs-based aid. Chairman Hatchett, Chairman Tillery, I will close my remarks there. We have been working on this budget for the last 7 months, and now we're happy to hand it off to you. To that end, I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to continuing to work with you, your subcommittee chairs, and members of your committees as we work our way through the process. Thank you.
Director, before we have anybody ask any questions, we just want to make sure you know that Representative Stinson has a building in Taylor County.
I'll look into OPB South for that. You're welcome.
President Pro Tem Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Dunn, thank you for all the great work you do for all of Georgia. I appreciate working with you. I have some concerns on the $50 million housing initiative. I support the idea, but it's in the amended budget, and that's a new program that's got to be rolled out and deployed before July 1. Does that give you pause, or?
Certainly all those dollars will not likely be allocated prior to July the 1st, but we anticipate there'd be a good case for reserve of those funds if the process has already started.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a follow-up along the same lines?
Yes, sir.
$2.5 billion in transportation infrastructure investment. Certainly I see the need for that. It just seems like that would take a long time to get spent. How will that work?
Yes. So, for example, I-75 is placed in CERTA's budget, which is an authority and not subject to lapse for those very reasons. But those funds will be encumbered. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director. You were talking about the Dream Scholarship,
yes,
which
ma'am.
A lot of us are very excited about. Hopefully everybody's excited about it. But you mentioned there that could be used for any degree, including technical. And I had asked a question to the Chancellor earlier this week about my concern that those dollars were only listed under the USG budget and there was no mention of them in the TCSG budget. So I wanted to see where I may be missing something. Hopefully my concern is misplaced.
So the current Dreams Foundation, the current USG Foundation's Dreams program, both TCSG and USG are eligible, and we're just adding to that. So they will, I'm sorry? Yes, ma'am. Now, I will also note we included another $1 million for college completion grant explicitly for TCSG students. And the last thing I'll mention here is we've got some pretty good data on the financial need of USG students. We don't have a lot of good data yet on the needs gap, if you will, for TCSG students once you consider Hope Career Grant and things like that. But again, we look forward to understanding more about that need, and again, our expectation it would be used for both.
Yeah, and it sounded like from the Commissioner that, well, and I know from work over the past years that there definitely is a gap. There's not going to be a gap for everybody, but there's still a gap for a lot. And on average, you go and pluck 5 students out of USG institution, you go pluck 5 out of a TCSG, more than likely the students that you pluck out of TCSG are going to be in those households under $40,000 or $50,000 a year. So certainly we have the need. But I just want to make clear, so it doesn't matter that that money is listed just in the USG budget. TCSG students would still be eligible.
That's correct. We expect the Dreams program to continue to operate as structured, and as currently structured, TCSG students are eligible.
Okay. And what about the students at the private colleges?
They would not be included.
Okay. And they're not eligible now? And
that's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Director Dunn.
Awesome.
You must have done a great presentation.
I like being last.
Thank you. Look forward
Thank
to working
you.
with you.
Yeah.
Members, just a reminder that all the presentations that were made are online under the House Budget Office tab on the legislative site. There are subcommittee meetings tomorrow, and there are subcommittee meetings scheduled for Tuesday. If there are any changes there, like everything, we'll keep you informed, and we'll look out for notices from the Speaker and from the Lieutenant Governor's offices on attendance and those issues. And also, these are House subcommittee meetings. Senate members are invited to attend so they can learn as much as they want. Mr. Chair?
Is that would that be considered dual enrollment, Mr. Chairman? I'm trying to figure that out. Guys, thank you all, members, for being here this past 3 days. You put a lot of hours, a lot of time in this. As you know, there have been over 40 presentations so far. Some things to remember. We are on a timeline, and while the weather interrupts that timeline, it does not slow it down. So please keep a watch of your emails. Also, you've got the governor's budget book to roll through. You know the subcommittees that you're on already. Expect that we will have to start rolling those very, very soon in order to keep up with the timeline that has been laid out by the full calendar. Thank you so much for your attendance, for your participation, and Chairman Hatchett, you get the last word.
We're adjourned.